In 1999, a hiker disappeared while crossing an old wooden bridge deep in the mountains of northern Washington. When rescuers arrived, they found his backpack, his camera, and a note that read, "The bridge counted 216 steps on my way across. 217 on the way back. He was never seen again." They called it an accident, a simple fall. But years later, locals began to notice something else. Every time someone crossed that bridge, the number of steps was never the same twice. Hidden among the thick evergreens and mist-covered ridges of a small logging town called Holomere, there's a ravine so deep that even sound seems to vanish into it. At its narrowest point stands an old suspension bridge, built in the 1940s, weathered, creaking, and long abandoned by the county. For the locals, the bridge has always been part of the background, a forgotten relic from a time when the forest still hummed with sawmills and riverboats. But for those who grew up in Holomere, it carried stories. Some said you could hear footsteps echo long after you stopped walking. Others swore that if you counted the planks, you'd never reach the same number twice. It wasn't a place people went for fun. Except for one man, David Rourke, a photographer who'd recently moved from Seattle after losing his job and, as friends would later say, a sense of direction. He rented a cabin near the river, spent his days exploring forgotten trails, and filled his notebooks with sketches of trees, reflections, and bridges. He told neighbors he was working on a project, something about time and distance. In his journal, he often wrote about the bridge. He described how the boards seemed to shift underfoot, how the air above the ravine felt thicker the longer he stood there. In one entry, dated October 5th, he wrote, "It feels like the bridge is remembering me. I count my steps, but it always disagrees." On October 11th, 1999, David left his cabin just before sunrise. His neighbor saw him carrying his camera, tripod, and a small journal tucked under his arm. The weather was clear but unusually quiet. No wind, no birdsong, just a heavy stillness that made even the forest seem to listen. By noon, the clouds had rolled in. The first rain of the season began to fall. When David didn't return by evening, his neighbor grew concerned. The next morning, his car was found parked by the trailhead leading to the bridge. The search took 3 days. Volunteers, dogs, and forest rangers combed the ravine and surrounding woods. They found his tripod on the bridge, legs extended, camera missing. Further along, near the middle, lay a small notepad sealed in a plastic bag. Inside, in hurried handwriting, were just 2 lines, 216 across, 217 back. It moved. That was the last thing David ever wrote. The river was dredged. Ropes were dropped into the chasm. Nothing, no body, no sign of a fall, not even a scrap of clothing. The official report said he likely slipped, but the rescuers who stood on that bridge swore something felt off. One ranger described the boards as uneven, as if they'd been rearranged overnight. Another said his step count came to 220. Weeks passed. The search was called off. David's belongings were sent to his sister in Spokane. Everything except the camera, which was never recovered. But in November, a fisherman reported finding a memory card wedged between river rocks 3 miles downstream. When the photos were developed, most showed the usual misty trees, the curve of the bridge, the ravine below. But the final image was different. It showed the bridge itself, viewed from the far side. The boards were warped, twisted slightly, as if the bridge were curving inward, folding upon itself. And standing in the center of the frame was a blurred figure, tall, featureless, and facing the camera. Investigators dismissed it as motion blur, but those who'd known David said he never took self-portraits. And besides, if the photo was his, who took it? Over the years, hikers continued to visit the site, counting their steps out of curiosity. Some claimed the number was always changing, 214 one day, 221 the next. A few said they heard faint clicking sounds, like the shutter of a camera, when no one else was there. The county eventually sealed the bridge with wooden barriers, posting a small metal sign, "Closed for repair, do not cross." But the boards still creak in the wind. And sometimes, locals say, you can hear counting, slow, deliberate, and wrong. Today, the Hollowmere Bridge is almost gone, swallowed by moss and time. Only a few of the old planks remain, stretching over the mist like ribs. Teenagers still dare each other to visit, but most don't stay long. They say the air feels heavier there, like being watched. And when they walk away, their footsteps never sound quite right. One of David's old journals was found years later at an estate sale in Spokane. On the last page, in faint pencil, it reads, "I think the bridge is trying to remember who built it. Every time I cross, it forgets a little more." The note ends there. No date, no signature, just the fading indentation of a pen pressed too hard into paper. Some places don't want to be crossed. They only want to be remembered. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to like this video and subscribe for more mysteries. See you next time.